Welcome to the Less Stressed Lawyer Show.
Hello and welcome back to the Less Stressed Lawyer Show with Miss Olivia Vizachero. Olivia is a former attorney turned life and business coach for lawyers. She helps ambitious attorneys stop overthinking, set boundaries, and take bold action so they can build a practice and a life they actually love. I'm Evan Mack, and today we're talking about why getting more done isn't always the goal and how lawyers can break free from the nonstop productivity trap. Miss Olivia, how are you, my dear?
I'm so good. How are you?
I'm well. This is the productivity trap. Why getting more done isn't the goal. So, Miss Olivia, lawyers are famous for being busy. Why do so many of them equate more work for more success?
So the first issue that comes up for people is people just assume more is better.
Yep.
And I tell people that's not true. More is just more. If you want more of something, you can decide that it is better, but don't just default to that thinking. My grandfather used to say, some is good, more is better. And I carried that with me for a very long time. And I deeply believe that's part of what fueled my overworking in the past. And when I finally caught that that was part of my belief system, I began to question it. And then I came around to more is just more. You get to decide whether or not it works for you. So that's part of the reason. People also don't define enough. So they operate on a default thought process instead of being very clear on what they're working towards. So they just keep giving more because they haven't defined it. What's enough work? Number of hours a day, number of hours a week, number of hours a year, both billable and total work hours.
Right.
Or what's enough money? People have this idea that I should just pursue more growth for the sake of growth rather than thinking about their whole life comprehensively and deciding this is enough money for this month. This is enough money for this season. This is enough money for this year. And yeah, you might leave a little bit on the table. When I started my business, I was so focused on just making the most amount of money possible.
Right.
And I worked really hard and long days, long hours. But now I'm in a season of my life where I want my days to look a little different. And I'm willing to take on fewer clients. And that means, yes, I could make more money, but I'd prefer not to because there are other things that matter more to me, which also begs the question, how do people want to spend their time? I think they lack clarity on that. So they just default to work. They also think of time as infinite, like it just goes on with no end in sight. So they constantly take on more work now rather than thinking about what does taking this on mean for how I'll have to work over the next several weeks, next several months in order to get it done. And then they push off the other stuff for someday or when things slow down. So that's the big issue here.
What does the productivity trap actually look like from like day to day to an attorney?
So the biggest one is an inability to rest. People experience immense discomfort when they're not working, typically in the flavor of guilt. They tell themselves, well, I could be working right now, so I should be working. And you really want to question that should thinking. Why do you think you should be working? What do you believe about rest? Do you believe that it's unproductive? How could it be productive? Do you believe that you have to earn it? What if you don't? What if it also doesn't matter whether it's productive or not? You can just rest because it's enjoyable. A lot of people, once they learn that rest could be productive, they're like, oh, I'll do it for that reason. I'm like, no, you could just do it because it's nice. So an inability to rest is a big part of it. But you also want to look at how you're spending your time. Are you constantly overbooking yourself because you want to get more done? And that leads to overwhelm or chronically feeling behind. Do you struggle to be present with people because you're always thinking about work, or you're multitasking, you're at dinner with friends or family members and you're on your phone because you just want to get a little bit more done? So those are some of the ways that it manifests.
So, Miss Olivia, how does that billable hour culture that we talked about in a different episode kind of feed into this constant need to stay busy, even when the work isn't really meaningful?
One, I think people stress about hitting their hours, whether they have a goal inside their own practice or they work at a firm that has a minimum requirement. And instead of being very strategic and mapping it out, doing the math, what do I need to bill each day, looking at when we have vacations and getting ahead of things rather than taking the vacation, feeling behind, and then having to play catch up. This is ultimately a math problem. And lawyers love to tell me I became a lawyer because I don't like math. But if you don't like math, number one, you don't like money. And I just said to a client recently, if money isn't the thing that motivates you, if you don't like math, you probably also don't like making memories, because you're constantly going to put work first and sacrifice those really meaningful moments.
Yep.
So it reinforces that, because people worry they won't hit it. So I just need to be working all the time in case something bad happens. They also think that money is the thing that is their measurement of success. And
Mhm.
while that can be part of your measurement, it doesn't need to be the entire definition. So take a second, and rather than having this vague idea of what success means to you and in your life, define that for yourself. How do you think of success? What markers are you using to measure your success? Money can be part of it, but you also get to have a life outside of work. And what would you like that to include? How much time would you like to devote to that? How will you need to set boundaries at work in order to protect that time so you're able to have both?
Can you unpack that a little bit more? How can these lawyers start measuring that success by the impact of the work instead of just the number of hours they bill or how much time they spend there?
Yeah, I watch a ton of people beat themselves up because they measure success by results.
Right.
And while you can measure your success by your results, not just the number of hours that you're billing or the amount of money that you're making, I don't want people to only focus on results. So really find a way to fall in love with the journey. If you did what you planned to do today, you are allowed to feel proud. You don't just have to get the win at trial or close the deal. If that's how you measure success, you're only going to give yourself permission to celebrate a few times a year, or, once a month, rather than being proud. Hey, I did a good job on this. Even if
Mhm.
I don't win, I can still feel successful. And then thinking about what success will look like outside of work. I really struggled with a definition of prestige, which is where I learned to start redefining things for myself. When I worked in big law, prestige to me meant the amount of money that I was making and the name of the firm that I worked for. And when I went to work for myself outside of the practice of law, I really challenged that definition and started to define prestige as not a salary, but unlimited earning potential
Hmm.
as an entrepreneur, and the ability to work from wherever I want, and also to have the freedom of being in control of my time. And because I changed that definition, I'm able to get so much fulfillment from what I now do, rather than looking back on my past career and romanticizing that because of how other people viewed it. So maybe success to you includes spending a certain amount of time with your spouse, or with your aging parents, or with your
Right.
kiddos while they're young, or being able to make it to their games. Maybe success to you looks like having that calm, organized workflow, rather than spinning your wheels and putting out fires and playing whack-a-mole all the time. I once had a client who, like me, wore busyness as a badge of honor. People take a lot of pride and get to feel very significant when they're overworking. We love to
Right.
feel needed. And when we overwork like that and give without limitation to our jobs, we think that we're very helpful and dependable and useful. So it leads to a lot of bad habits. And she went to a closing. She was a transactional attorney, and the attorneys on the other side were bragging about how they had stayed up all night working. And I used to brag about that all the time. It was like the biggest flex. How many all-nighters did I pull this week or this month?
Right.
How early did I wake up to start working? How many hours did I bill in a day? Now I don't see it as a flex, and I see it the way that she came to see it as well. When she left that meeting, her mentor was with her, and she told him, "Oh my God, that is so incredible. They are so dedicated. I can't believe they worked that hard and stayed up all night." And he looked at her and he said, "Oh, did you find that impressive?" And she was like, "Yeah, that's incredible. Just their dedication. They're so driven and determined." And he goes, "Oh, anytime I hear someone working like that, anytime I hear about that, it just tells me that they're messy, that they're not in control of their schedule. They're not in control of what they commit to. And they're really not professional in the way that you could be if you were clear on the time that you have and planned in accordance with it, and didn't work in a way that requires that hustling in fringe
Hmm.
hours, late nights or weekends." And She had a deep fear of being perceived as like messy or sloppy. And it shifted the way that she thought about it. And she started to work in a much more organized, structured manner. And I now teach that to my clients. It's not a truth, it's just a perspective, it's an opinion, but it helped me as well as this client of mine change the flashy, honor that comes with overworking in a way that really sacrifices so many other parts of your life.
And speaking to that, when someone's calendar is packed, how do you help them decide what actually is worth their time and how to manage it?
So I actually just hosted a retreat and we did this live in person. It's something that I've been working with my clients on during our weekly sessions, but it was so fun to go through it as a group. People, like I said earlier, think of time as infinite and
Yeah.
it just goes on without end. So what I find to be really helpful is we need to create bookends for our time. I teach people to do this when they plan their days. You want to pick a start and stop time for your workday so you can get an accurate sense of your availability, and then plan less than what fits in the time you have available just to leave a little buffer. But what I find really helpful is to think about your week. So we all get 168 hours in a week and we all spend all 168. There is no remainder. There are no rollover minutes. And I'm aging
Mhm.
myself there a little bit with the phone plans back in the day, but nothing rolls over. So you're spending your entire time allowance every single week. So you can't make time. That's a lie. You can only swap time. If there's
Right.
something that you're not doing right now that you want to be doing, you have to exchange something else for that new thing. And when people start to get clear on how they're currently spending their 168 versus how they'd like to be spending their 168, they typically realize they're trying to pack like at least 200 hours into 168 and it just doesn't fit. So when you recognize that it doesn't fit, and you can catch yourself on this if you tell yourself, I don't have time, I don't have time, I don't have time. We always want to answer the questions to do what, by when,
Hmm.
and it will either be true or it won't be. But if it doesn't fit and you want it to, then you start to look at the other things that you spend your 168 on and you say, is that really worth it? Those 4 hours a night on Instagram, is that really worth it? Or would I rather call a friend and talk to them, catch up with them, or play with my kids, or spend some one-on-one time with my partner, or go to the
Right.
gym? So that really helps when you get clear on the math.
But many attorneys, they fear slowing down will make them look lazy or perceived as lazy. How do you coach these clients through those kind of mindsets?
So the first thing we need to do is, again, define lazy. What does that mean to you? Most people who are thinking that, they mean I'm lazy if I'm not always working. And if that's the standard, then you would try to never sleep, right? Then sleep is also lazy
Right.
or unproductive. People might not use the L word, but they will think of it as unproductive. And I used to be guilty of that. I used to tell myself if there was a world where I could not sleep, like sign me up. I'd just spend that time working while everyone else is resting and I'd get more done. But you have to recognize we're human beings, not humans doing. Okay. So the point, our value isn't associated with just how hard we work. And we get to have a complete holistic life, not just focus on work. Work's a part of it, but there are so
Mhm.
many other parts. So we want to define lazy, reconfigure our expectations. What are we expecting of ourselves? How might we want to shift that to make room for some other things so we don't create that guilt when we're not working just because we could be? And then also, when you're fearing being either perceived as lazy or judging yourself for being lazy, you're really stuck in all or nothing thinking. And it doesn't have to be one or the other. Either you're productive or you're lazy. You can rest and have time that's not work productive, but still productive for creating the life you want to live and be doing a good job at work. So just because
Mm.
you aren't working or aren't working as much as you could be doesn't necessarily mean something bad about you. And everyone's going to have their own standard here. You're going
Right.
to be on to yourself. Am I doing enough? Again, define enough, but you'll either know you are or you aren't. And you can work in accordance with the standard that you define.
So, Miss Olivia, what role does that rest or white space play in performing at a higher level? How can that help you perform at a higher level?
So it's crucial. Number one, we got to give our brains a break. There's a reason we have brilliant ideas in the shower because we are in a distraction-free environment and you give yourself space to think. I used to be a consumption-aholic, so to speak, constantly, chronically consuming information, music, podcasts, YouTube videos, audiobooks, just can't waste a moment. Let's learn and do as much as possible
Right.
every waking hour.
Right.
And when I started to recognize that I was caught in this productivity trap, I started to examine my relationship with rest and began practicing spending a little bit of time resting each day. And I really want to differentiate between rest and leisure.
Hmm.
Rest is literally doing nothing. So if working out is relaxing for you, amazing, but that's leisure or something that you do to better yourself, but it's not rest. Watching TV is leisure, not rest. Reading a book is leisure, not rest. So rest is truly doing nothing. You can lay down for 10 minutes, just give your brain a break. I don't technically consider this rest, but it is restful for my brain. I now drive in complete silence, and people think that I am a crazy person for this. But it's like cleaning out the junk drawer in your brain. You just give your brain an opportunity to sort and process, and you'll
Right.
get your best ideas that way. So that's one reason it's productive. But you also give yourself a chance to recharge your batteries. I take
Mhm.
10-minute little cat naps. I don't fall asleep, but I just shut my eyes and lay there in between
Yeah.
some of my calls, and I get energy just from giving myself that opportunity to recharge. So you'll get great ideas. You will feel more restored. Those are two great reasons to do it. But also just giving yourself permission to be human and embracing your humanity. This starts with learning how to rest. And once you're able to do that, you're able to give yourself permission to do so many other things that are beneficial for you as well that aren't work related.
Can you share with an example of a client, for someone who broke free from this always on habit and kind of what changed for them after kind of implementing some of the things that you've been talking about?
Yes. I have one client in particular that stands out as like my shining A student when it comes to learning how to rest. And I remember when we were working together, she said that she really measures her self-worth based on how hard she works, how productive she is,
Mhm.
and any wasted time feels like a moral failure on her part. And she associates it with being lazy. So I wanted her to work on restoring her relationship with rest. And I told her to set aside 5 minutes and do nothing. And the idea made her cringe. She's like, oh my God, I could do so much. I could send so many emails during those 5 minutes. And I think I initially said 20, and the thought of that was incomprehensible to her. So we
Mhm.
made it smaller. So it was a
Let's
little bit
start
more
with 5.
manageable. Yeah,
Let's
start
go
with
5.
5. We'll see where it gets us, and maybe you'll like it more than you think. And then we can go from there. Because she was like, could I, split up like 1 minute at a time, a couple days a week? I'm like, no, we're going to do 5. And when she did, she learned how to be with herself. And she learned how to change her expectation for herself, that not every minute needed to have maximized productivity. And as she started to change her relationship with rest, she started to realize that she's more than just an attorney. She's more than just a service provider. She is a human being and she gets to have this complete dynamic life. And
Hmm.
now I look at the things that she's able to do guilt-free. She just took a 2-week trip to Paris with her husband. She
Amazing.
would have worked while she was there, or she wouldn't have taken the trip at all. She's able to enjoy time with her kids in a way that she wasn't able to before. She works less and enjoys her evenings now. She doesn't work on weekends the way that she used to. She really got so much of her life back because she got out of the productivity trap and started changing the way that she thinks about rest and relaxation and leisure and all of that stuff.
Good stuff. So, Miss Olivia, for any lawyer that's listening who's deep into this productivity trap, what's the one thing they can do today to start working smarter instead of harder?
So plan when you won't work. One big issue that I see for people is because they're telling themselves, if I could work, I should work. And this is different for lawyers because we technically could always be working. If you're a surgeon, if you're not in the OR or treating patients or seeing patients before and after surgery at your physical place, you don't necessarily have the same ability to be working all the time. Or if you're a line worker at a factory, I'm here in Detroit, so we're really familiar with the assembly line. You can't be working if you're not there and drilling the screws and bolts and all of that stuff into whatever it is that you're putting together. So because we could always be working, a lot of people tell themselves that they should work. And then it comes time, nights, weekends, to do that work, and they don't want to. And that's okay. But they feel guilty the whole time because they go seek pleasure and do something enjoyable, but it's not actually all that enjoyable because they're shaming themselves the whole time. So plan when you won't work. And if the idea of not working all weekend seems completely unavailable to you, that is okay. You don't need to go big or go home first. Start small. Give yourself, I used to hate working on Saturdays, so I started with that. But if you can't imagine not working one full day on the weekend, pick a couple hours on one of the weekend days where you promise yourself you will not work. And then you can do the same thing in the evenings. I won't work during family dinner, or I won't work after this time, and start to honor it. And then you reap the benefits of doing something else with your time, which is really the way to keep doing more and more of this. Once you start to see that it can be enjoyable to do something else, you'll want more of it.
Awesome. Miss Olivia, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. That's it for today's episode of the Less Stressed Lawyers Show. If you're ready to stop overthinking and start making bold moves in your life and practice, visit oliviavizachero.com. Don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a review, and share this with someone else that might find this information helpful. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.